Cool. So, hello and welcome to our fourth installment of season 2 for our Get Into series from Ladies of Cred London, where we demystify roles in tech. Today's very special guest is Miss Taylor. She
Hi.
is a super talented individual who has had a very varied career, from analyst to teaching robots to being a certified cloud professional. And she currently builds and manages distributed applications in a cloud environment at Oracle.
Yeah.
She's been recognized for numerous achievements, including as one of the UK and Ireland's top 30 tech innovators and a Wonder Woman Tech 2018 Woman of Color in Robotics Award. Welcome, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you.
It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. What an introduction.
Yeah, that was amazing. I think that's one of the best introductions I've had. Sorry for the screaming baby. She's like 5 months and she's just been going crazy today. So she might make an appearance. Yeah. Hold on, let me just get the bottle for her. Mars, this is very naughty of you. Yes. Yes. So I'm Yasmin, as introduced, or Taylor, Yasmin Taylor. It's complicated. People could call me either or. And yeah, that's why I'm currently a site reliability engineer working at the moment for Oracle. I do that and manage about a team of 10. And on the side, as I'm doing now, I have a podcast just talking about tech, all things DevOps, and mostly just advocating for women, primarily in STEM. So when asked to come on this podcast, I was really excited because I think DevOps is still quite new, regardless of what people say. And quite a lot of women have piqued an interest in being in DevOps, but they're just quite shy or they don't really know where to start. So I'm happy to kind of come on board and answer all questions people have.
Awesome. Well, we're all in the right place.
Yes.
Great stuff. So thanks very much. That's a fabulous introduction. I wanted to go a little bit more into your journey into tech and how you came to be where you are today.
Yeah, sure. Weirdly enough, it actually started when I was about 10 years old. I originally wanted to be an astronaut, and that was primarily because of my love of like Star Wars and science fiction films. So I'm talking way back like Logan 5, you know, the old episodes of like Star Trek and stuff. And I realized I was just so kind of like overwhelmed by the technology, and I'm just like, oh, I wish one day we can kind of have like flying cars or whatever, but that hasn't happened yet, apart from Tesla, which is like close enough. And I actually just kind of like started my tech journey from there. I had very supportive parents. My dad was really good at maths, so he taught me algebra really young. So when I went to secondary school, I just was really good at science. Went on to A levels, and I done my A levels in biology, chemistry, and physics. I think I got about a C because it is quite full on. And I managed to start my journey in AI. So I graduated in 2014, but I started uni in 2011. And I was offered a place at the University of Bedfordshire to be one of the first to study artificial intelligence and robotics. So it was a totally new course. I was one of the first kind of like students in the UK to do it. And I would like to think it's paid off quite well. In regards to my journey into DevOps, I always tell a joke that I literally woke up one day and I was just a DevOps engineer.
Okay.
It's actually it's a mythology that has somehow turned into engineering. So for me, it's as strange as being a Prince 2 or ITIL or agile engineer. It kind of makes no sense, but the market thinks it's great. So I'm kind of just riding the wave at the moment.
100%. You've really given a great segue into a bunch of questions that we're going to cover today.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome, perfect. I wanted to ask, in terms of platform engineering, what does it entail? How would you describe it? And what does a day look like for you?
Platform engineering, I think it's very a diverse question, if that makes sense. And the reason why is because, you know, I can right now go for a job as a platform engineer. I can also go for a job as a cloud engineer, an SRE. The only difference I would say platform is actually just focusing on engineering the applications in the platform that you're working on. So that could be in-house applications or supporting projects and applications off from kind of like a project base. A cloud engineer is probably just supporting the cloud tools. So that could be an agnostic approach, AWS, GCP, Oracle, Azure. And an SRE is quite different because it focuses more on the monitoring and observation of the tools. So using different tools such as New Relic, Datadog, Prometheus for Grafana. So I would say sitting in an SRE function is not just deploying it, but also kind of looking at the delivery cycle behind the deployment and making sure that the minimum amount of incidents occur. I would say being a platform engineer, from my experience, and cloud engineer is easier to transition to if you come from a software engineering background and then have great knowledge or use of the cloud tools.
Okay, perfect. Right, so that's great. That was actually going to be my next question. So you've already answered that one, which is perfect. Something we were talking about was how these roles tend to be, women have an interest in them, but they're not yet filling these roles, and they don't seem to really know how to enter all these different diverse jobs, which are rapidly changing, as you've mentioned. What do you think specifically is the kind of contribution that women could make in these roles?
I think an empathetic approach, and that's not to stereotype all women to say that, you know, empathetic, but I think there is a beauty in the feminine nature. Even if you think of like Siri or Alexa, it's women voices, and they kind of like do that for a reason. I would say the reason why a lot of women probably don't enter tech, because you do kind of have to be thick-skinned. I think now hosting like meetups such as this and other diversity and inclusion things going on, it's a bit more easier to kind of like enter tech. It literally felt like when I entered tech that you were just being thrown in and landing on concrete, but now you're like thrown in and landing on like a soft cloud, funnily enough. It always has been seen as obviously mostly male predominated, so it can be quite intimidating. And I think when people think of tech, they think of Elon Musk, they think of Einstein, they think you're literally sitting down every day coding algorithms. And in some cases you are, you know, DevOps is quite technical, but there's such a range of other technical jobs that you can kind of do in tech that don't require you to code. So my main like key thing is to advocate for not only women getting in tech, but also showing the freedoms that can come with being in tech and the fact that you don't have to be technical. But I actually was discussing this the other day, and I think the reason why a lot of women don't enter tech is because they don't think it's sexy. And I don't know if that's a bit of a sexist thing to say, but I think, you know, looking at the TV and the media and what they subconsciously kind of ingrain into us, even things like Big Bang Theory, you know, you've got Sheldon Smith, who's like the nerdy one, and then Penny's like the Don blonde bombshell. You know, why can't you look how you want to be in tech? So yeah, I think there's quite a lot of stereotypes that we have to break down, and I think we're kind of getting to an age where we are doing that.
Yeah, I think it's spot on. There's quite a few reasons, and one of them is definitely perception, for sure. And I currently feel in all these roles that you've mentioned in the DevOps space, especially, are kind of suffering from that more than other roles.
Yeah.
So it's great, and that's part of why you're here. So we spoke a little bit about what women can bring specifically. What other kinds of traits would you say that someone would kind of naturally display that might show that they would be a good platform engineer?
Curiosity. So, you know, working as a platform engineer, so many things unfortunately could go wrong. It's not always a step-by-step positive deployment. So I think being brave and curious to kind of have the ability to say, hey, I don't know how to do this, let me Google it, let me ask around, and also bravery to accept that it's okay not to know everything. It's okay to, in certain circumstances, break one or two things. So I think those are the two main attributes that you need to definitely step into the world of DevOps. And, you know, with that being said, with it being quite a male-dominated industry, having to have, you know, characteristics such as being brave or curious, plus being surrounded by men, can be quite intimidating. You know, it took me quite a while to kind of have the courage in a room full of men to say, hey, I don't know how to do this. So I would say those are the two main things. Another point I would say is to be weirdly enough good at problem solving. If you're somebody that's quite good at like anagrams and stuff, the ability to think on the spot, I think would be a great platform engineer, and just a keen interest in technology.
Yeah, Perfect. Okay, that's very succinct. So now you do write code as
Yes.
a platform engineer. What kind of tools are you making use of
So
in terms of coding, I guess?
I would say coding, Linux, PowerShell are quite good as well, especially working alongside them, like something like AWS. Terraform is a big player, obviously working in the world of DevOps in regards to platform engineering as well. Python is pretty much standard across most. There are some applications that use Java, but I've noticed that the applications that do use Java are probably legacy systems that were quite monolith and kind of going on to microservices. You would probably use Python because it's a bit more encouraging of automation, which is what DevOps is kind of like aiming towards.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you're basically saying different ecosystems are sort of have evolved differently, and some are much better
Yeah,
in the DevOps world than others.
yeah,
Okay, interesting. It's a very interesting perspective because I'm coming from it from the other side,
okay.
from a software engineering side. So I wanted to ask you as well, how do you interact with software developers? What are the kinds of conversations that you end up having with them and having to teach them and them teaching you and all that sort of stuff?
Oh gosh, they're like working with software engineers can be so tricky because they just see code in black and white, where we see
Yeah.
the whole picture. So I would say working in platform engineering, you're not just deploying or coding, you're decoding or you're deploying or coding to a process. And I noticed that software engineers, they beautifully like evolve into DevOps engineers when they learn processes. So there's always a bit of trouble because you're like, okay, well, you've coded or automated this, but it's not in a process. So that's what I would say, how I work closely with software engineers. They do the coding hard work sometimes, and I input the processes. So for instance, I can work with a Python developer and we could be working on a project kind of integrating or creating CI/CD pipelines using AWS Lambda, for instance.
Yeah, so you've struck on something there, which is how these two roles kind of, if you spend enough time together, they kind of morph a little bit into each other, but not quite. They still remain distinct, but have a lot of overlapping skills. And I think that this is the part of the DevOps movement that people have maybe forgotten.
Yeah,
Is that you've still got dev and you've still got operations, which has kind of become this platform role. And correct me if
yeah,
I'm wrong here. But I've just seen it done really badly. And it's also coincided with this whole idea of cloud platforms and infrastructure as
yeah.
code and continuous delivery. So it's very interesting to me to hear you say that, because that's also my understanding, is that they're supposed to interact quite heavily and to work together,
Yeah.
and often learn each other's skills.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's
Okay.
kind of like working in a big family. You don't have to transition
Mm,
to DevOps, but I definitely do feel knowledge of cloud tools and how they work would kind of edify your role as a software engineer, because you code around your infrastructure architecture.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the biggest thing for me. I started off in quite a traditional environment. I didn't really have much understanding of the platform I was running on. I didn't even deploy my own software to production. So,
Wow.
so things have changed for the better, much for the better.
Yeah.
And then, so we're talking about software engineers. I was quite curious as someone on the platform is, do you have much interaction with the business, and do you understand, the measure of the platform work that you do that is to the business and how that gets measured?
Yes, so working as a like senior SRE, I'm quite focused on making sure not as a company, but yes, as a company, my projects are kind of reaching SLAs and SLIs, and just that, to always encourage whatever we're building to go towards time efficiency, automation, and most importantly, cost efficiency, just so we can kind of like lower error budget costs if needed be. So that's kind of like my involvement, is kind of just seeing the wider picture and just seeing how SRE can facilitate the business towards automation and quicker turnarounds, and just mainly focus on incident management, problem management, SLIs and SLOs, and making sure that we're hitting a concept at least of KPIs.
Okay, so very interesting. So you, instead of being focused on a particular product and its usage, you definitely see your impact, but it's much broader.
Yes.
So, okay, awesome. I find that very interesting, because I think that this isn't, it's something that people don't always realize, is you can have a very different impact depending on where you sit in your technical positions in the business, which is very interesting. Cool, great. So we mentioned a bit about DevOps movement. So I think let's talk a little bit about some stuff in there before we move on to our quick fire round in a few minutes. You've mentioned a few processes and tools, but I'd like to get a little bit more specific in terms of your day-to-day sort of tool kit. What would you say you kind of have in your toolkit that you actively use on a daily or weekly basis?
Daily, obviously working in Oracle Cloud and using it as a hybrid approach with AWS, or like cloud platforms such as Azure or GCP. I mainly use, I mainly use Terraform. That's something I use daily. I've used CloudFormation before, so I would say day to day it consists of maintaining the Jenkins. Sorry. Maintaining the Jenkins pipelines, so like CI/CD pipelines, using Terraform in regards to scripting and automation, AWS, Oracle, and Kubernetes, so creating clusters and taking care of the nodes and stuff.
Okay, cool.
Admin stuff like going through tickets, backlogs in the morning. Sure. Yeah, never forget that. That's in like every role from support up to like leaderships.
Totally, and that's perfect, Sarah, because I was just going to ask you what processes do you have, and how do you run your team? So as a dev, I'm very used to things like Kanban and Jira boards and that sort of thing. What are the processes that you use in the platform team?
So we go towards the Scrum model. So we do kind of have like Scrum Masters, I think that's what they're called. Going towards kind of like using sprints as well. So like checking tickets on Jira, splitting up projects into sprints. But overall, we're just very agile. That's what we're kind of like leaning towards, just agility.
Yeah, perfect. And then in terms of the code that you do write, I was just curious if you're able to use practices like TDD, and if you guys do pairing and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate for knowledge sharing, code sharing, and clean code. So that's kind of like within platform engineering, what we call that is going towards a GitOps model. So kind of like having stuff in like GitHub or GitLab and just kind of like code sharing and repository base. So going towards like TDD and stuff is something that I do.
Okay, that's very cool. Tough to hear that. Yeah, so there's even more overlap than I thought.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do while you've got some time to chat there is we're going to quickly do our quick fire rounds. So the rule here is to just say whatever comes to top of mind, and there's no wrong answers.
Okay.
So do you prefer cats or dogs?
Cats.
What is a country that you'd love to visit that you have not been to yet?
Hawaii.
Oh, beautiful. Yes, that sounds amazing. And what is your favorite country that you have been to so far?
Canada.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
What would you say are some of your favorite meetup groups?
Oh, there's Women in DevOps, London.
Yeah, nice one, yeah.
Data and AI, that's what I'm in with Professor Andy. Yeah, Professor Andy. He leads a big AI one. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Do you think you're more an early bird or a night owl?
Because of her, I would say night owl now, but before I was like an early bird.
Yeah, quite a change. Nice. And because this is the UK, Marmite, do you love it or hate it?
Love it.
Very nice. What is your favorite meal to cook at home?
I'll probably like my country's food, which is like it's you eat it with your hands, like banku.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
And cookie dough. I love cookie dough.
Good one. Yes, I think you'd like some too.
Yeah.
And then perfect segue. How have you found being a mom in tech?
Oh gosh. Do you know what? It's weird. I think because of the pandemic. Yeah, sorry. Because of the pandemic, it's afforded me the ability to kind of go back to work earlier. So when she's about 8, 9 months. Other than that, I would say it gives me a lot of freedom because I can choose to work remotely. So still kind of be a mom instead of sending it off to a nanny and work at the same time. So I think so far being a mom is good. There is obviously it can be quite nerve-wracking, especially when you're on like a call like this or something important. She's just screaming in the background, and you still feel like you might be stereotyped. And I've spoken to so much women in tech that feel like, after they've have given birth, they feel like to hide their baby. So obviously when you're working face to face, you have to go on maternity, you come into work pregnant, people would know. But now in COVID, a lot of women are like, should I tell them that I'm on maternity? I'm like, yeah, but there's so many biases against women in general, just having kids. So that's one thing that I'm happy that COVID hasn't necessarily impacted me that way. But I've kind of just used the concept of being a mom as my superpower, that, not to say that women can do it all, but it just shows that tech is quite versatile, and women will have kids, some will soon, so it's kind of she has to code alongside me.
Yeah, for sure. I think nail on the head there. It is a superpower,
Yeah.
Pop out a kid and carry on, really. Which not everyone can do. So that's great. I think you're spot on. Definite superpower. And really good point about the career. Having just a little bit of flexibility means that you can keep up with your career as much as your family, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah,
that's great.
Distracting though. I think I only heard of baby brain when I was pregnant, and tech is such an analytical job that requires you to think on the spot. It's literally like working in tech is like going to school because you have to continuously learn. So apart from sleep deprivation that could last up to a year because of teething and stuff, and baby brain, I'm literally just at work and someone's like, oh, could you just like code the most simple line? Before it would be like that. But I've noticed that I'm in an R-ing and all in, and then you lose confidence and you lose trail of thought, and you're just like, ha. So that's the only hurt I say.
At least you have an excuse. I think that happens to a lot of people for just no reason at all. Awesome. And then the last question here is, what is a product that you wish existed?
A robot nanny, that would be great.
Yes.
Apart from that, I mean, I would say a product that I wish existed. I would say kind of like virtual screens. So obviously we have Zoom calls where you can see face to face, but how about we have like virtual reality hubs where you can kind of like send your virtual emoji off to like represent you at work.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I look forward to your MVP on that one.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Very cool. Thank you very much. Right. So back into platform engineering. We spoke a little bit about how you interact with developers, and some of the knowledge sharing that happens. What would you say specifically are some of the biggest knowledge gaps that you notice developers have when working on a new platform or working on cloud?
The pressure to think you have to know it all. I think working in DevOps or platform engineering is such a big title, and you do kind of need like either an academic or self-taught, sturdy background. So you don't really always have the confidence to say, hey, I don't know that, because it's at times, especially working for government or banks, and there's something that needs to be deployed. It's not just a case of I don't know how to do that and let me take my time in Google. It's I don't know how to do that. You better figure it out in 5 minutes. Otherwise, the servers are on like overload. So it can be quite pressurizing in that sense.
Yes, for sure. But that's a good point. Is try not to think you need to know everything, because otherwise you won't get anywhere, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay, so given that these roles sort of a lot of these roles coincide. So you mentioned you've kind of yourself have gone across being a platform engineer and a cloud engineer, and you're currently doing SRE work.
Yeah.
What would you say? So those are some parallel roles.
Yeah.
What are some other parallel roles or progression paths that one can go to from the perspective of currently being a platform engineer?
I would take cloud architecture, which is something that I'll be moving into in 3 months, luckily for me. So I would say cloud architecture, technical lead. I think with all tech, the issue is that there's no perfect role that allows you to be super technical and super strategic. It always decides to kind of like split into two parts. But cloud architecture, solution architecture is that perfect mix of being customer facing, consumer advocacy, and at the same time being very technical. So having the ability to explain technical issues in layman terms and implement it at the same time. So I think if you're people facing, going towards cloud architecture. If not, kind of going to like a senior developer lead, probably going for like hedge funds or big banks. They have so much cool greenfield projects going on.
Okay, super interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then talking a little bit about progression. You mentioned that, and we've talked a little bit about how, there's still not a lot of women in this particular role set. How have you had to advocate for your own self in your jobs?
I think for me, having to advocate for myself in my own job is to kind of show them that regardless of my age, I can kind of do the job. I think apart from working in quite a male-dominated industry, I'm like under 30. So sometimes I work with quite senior people that are like 5 to 10 or even 20 years older than me. So it's just giving them confidence that you can kind of basically just do the job. Also kind of like being a woman in tech, kind of just continuously subconsciously wanting to break down barriers as well. So that's what I'll say are some of the main hurdles that I've had to face.
Okay, well, you've done really well. I wanted to ask you a little bit about certification because it's especially dominant in your line of work. Are there any certifications that you think are worth doing? And on the back of that, are there any certifications that you might advise people to avoid?
It's so weird because I've only got one certification, and that's in Oracle Cloud. I'm currently studying for my AWS, but I think my master's and my degree, and obviously I have like quite a big GitHub repository. I do quite a lot of meetups and stuff, kind of speaks from my experience. But if you do want to get your foot in the door, I would say it's not just about doing certifications. It's taking your time out and making your own mini projects so that when you do go on the interview, you can say, hey, I don't have X amount of years as a cloud engineer, but here are my certifications and some of the projects that I've worked on. So I've worked with developers or people in the cloud industry that maybe have like 20 years, but they don't have any certifications, but then they do it later on. It's all about the experience. And then I guess the certifications are like the icing off the cake.
Right. Okay. That's really, really interesting. So in your GitHub repo that serves as a portfolio, what kind of projects do you have in there that have helped you get into the platform role?
I make up my own ones, so I just Google them and try to replicate it. So maybe kind of like, I don't know, API, creating an API call registry, using like Python, new languages like using SQL, Alchemy, just stuff like that, just anything that can be integrated into the code, just quick examples of like Terraform branching, cloud architecture designs.
Okay. Oh, perfect. Wealth of information. Amazing. I wanted to then, once you've got your portfolio and you've tried out a couple of things, how would you go about preparing for an interview process for this job?
So what I usually tend to do is it depends on each stage for companies is different. Some stages could be like a 30-minute call with like the CEO first, or some companies can be like a quick technical deep dive into your CV and experiences that you had. They don't necessarily ask me to. I do prefer code pairing interviews rather than just a take-home test. I don't think it's a clearer view of, you know, how we can potentially work together or the type of everyday problems that you face. And then I just kind of show them projects that I've done before.
Okay, and on this, on the other side of that, just to complete the full picture, you obviously built up your own team. When you interview, what are some of the things that you specifically look for in people?
Oh, that's quite a good question. One, if you know they've got the credentials to actually do the job, but more so attitude. I think, you know, not every developer or tech person is going to know everything. It's just more so the desire, the passion, and the hungriness to learn. I know that sounds a bit sales pitchy and cliche, but those attributes are so important when kind of like looking for team members to join, because you're not going to know everything. So how do you handle if you don't know something, and what is your attitude really?
Okay, so this has been really interesting because I think it's not necessarily so clear with these roles, and especially with the marketing around the applications, that having that curiosity, having that willingness to just try things, and building up a portfolio of the tools in use.
Yeah.
Just like a developer might build a couple of apps, building up a portfolio of those tools is just as relevant for the platform world as that portfolio of apps is for the developer world. So this is really, really, really super interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. And then you currently live in a DevOps world in your professional career,
Yeah.
but you have also done some stuff in robotics. You've won that award, and you're currently studying AI.
AI science, yeah.
Yeah. So how did that happen? What's the story there?
I actually got a scholarship to do my master's in data science and AI. It's a bit difficult. I started when I was like 7 months pregnant, and now I was like, oh, maybe we should have like waited a year at least. But we'll see what happens with that. But that's what I'm currently doing at the moment. In
Okay.
regards to my journey into robotics, I actually left it behind because the UK wasn't able to kind of like facilitate the type of robotics I wanted to go in unless I was to go abroad. So I actually kind of left that, went into technical implementation, then fell into like software engineering and DevOps. I used to kind of like do projects on my YouTube on the side, but I've still have an interest in robotics, but more so the code behind the robots, so like automation and neuro learning for like robots and human robotic procession.
Okay. Really, really interesting. What would you say is the overlap there, if any?
Between robotics and AI?
Between the sort of AI world in general and the platform kind of work you're doing now.
Oh wow! I mean, I use so much big data tools, and a lot of the big data tools, the concept behind creating them or using them is to encourage automation or continuous deployment. So, funnily enough, there's actually a job role I've seen called AI Ops.
Okay.
Yeah, I got for so
Right.
much. Yeah.
Okay. So you could slot right in there, I guess. Oh, interesting. Super interesting. Okay. Right. Thank you very much for that. We are going to step into our second and final quickfire round. I've got a couple of tooling questions in here, so hopefully I've made some right decisions, but you're welcome to have a chuckle if I haven't. Cool. So the first one is, are you a Mac or a PC person?
Now I'm a Mac.
Mm-hmm. Converter. What is your favorite app?
Oh, my favorite app, probably YouTube to put us to sleep. Yeah, YouTube. I like YouTube.
Yeah, me too. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Mouse or trackpad?
Trackpad.
What is the best book that you have read? The latest best book?
Oh, well, my favorite book is Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe.
Okay.
And current book I'm reading at the moment is like The Secret.
Okay. What's that about?
It's kind of like the law of attraction and stuff.
Okay. Very interesting. Are you a music while working person?
No, 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 I can't do it.
Very cool. AWS or GCP?
AWS.
Okay. Ansible or Puppet?
Ansible.
Okay, that was very fast.
Yeah.
Cloud formation or Kubernetes?
Oh, Kubernetes.
Good, good. And what is your favorite meal to take away?
Probably Chinese.
That's
Yeah.
good as well. And then final one, what is some of the best advice that you've been given in your career?
Probably, I don't know if it's bad, fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not yeah. I think it's a bit hard to do that in tech though, because they're like, okay, cool, I'll code this. You're just like, all right. But I think it's more so in relation to confidence. You know, if you want to be something, act like, hang around people or kind of like envision yourself there, and then when you are there, remember the hard work that it took you to get there.
Yeah, spot on.
Basically, yeah.
I think that's actually fabulous advice.
Yeah.
And it sort of relates a little bit back to what you were mentioning earlier, where you kind of feel like you have to know all the things and do all the things before you can actually do the job.
Yeah.
And that's not true. Part of the job is that ability to learn, the ability to pick up tools quickly. You can't, it's impossible to actually keep up with everything.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Amazing. Thank you very much. Right, then finally, I wanted to ask you about what do you think are some of the latest developments in the platform DevOps cloud world that you think are worth keeping an eye on?
I know Jenkins has something called Jenkins IO now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new registry tool called Harbor UI, which kind of like used alongside Docker in regards to like storing images in a more efficient way. And that's kind of like what I know for now. I haven't done my research a bit because I've been occupied, but those are the main two things I've been keeping an eye on.
Okay. And then once you do get back to work, what are you excited to learn about and work on next?
I'm going back to work. I'm just more excited to kind of like really just go into the architecture space and kind of actually have the opportunity to create high level designs and technically implement them at the same time. It's very easy to kind of like be a DevOps engineer and work on a project, but when you create the project and see it come to life, that's what I'm really excited about starting.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, I'm really, really excited to see where you end up in a couple of years. I think it's been super interesting. I really love the really simple ideas that you've put forward today, and I think it's really, really going to be helpful to people who have been curious about infrastructure, but have really been putting it off because it just seems so overwhelming. Is there any last pieces of advice that you think you would like to offer to anyone who thinks they might be interested in this but haven't quite got the confidence to go for it just yet?
I would say just keep on learning, keep on going on projects. You don't have to know every technology. Kind of make sure you stick to a niche. Be a master of one instead of a trader of all, if that makes sense. And that was one of the mistakes I made in my career. I just thought I had to know everything. So my CV, especially with being a contractor and it already being jumpy, was so varied. I was like, oh, what do you do? Stick to one thing, and rather than changing job roles, think about how you can implement. Yes. Think about how you can implement new technologies in your new role.
Okay, amazing.
Google jobs that are ahead of you. So I knew, let's say 2 years ago, I wanted to be a cloud architect. I would Google the job descriptions of cloud architects and then work towards them.
Yeah, no, perfect, amazing. Excellent advice. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ms. Stella, very, very much. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you. Thank you so much for your valuable insight, and we very much look forward to seeing all your amazing career in the future. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry about the noise.
No.